coffee. I hope you all have your coffee. SBIR Coffee Corner. We're really excited to host this, especially during Global Entrepreneurship Week. We thought this would be a really great break from our day to talk about SBIR, which hopefully we all love if we're on this call. My name is Dana Catron. I am the SBIR Program Director at Arrowhead Center. And Arrowhead Center, since there's a lot of people on here who aren't in New Mexico, I just wanted to touch really quickly on what we do. So Arrowhead Center is the economic development arm of New Mexico State University. We serve the entire state of New Mexico since we are the land grant institution. And so doing that is really advantageous because it allows us to work with clients throughout the entire state. And our New Mexico FAST program, which is funded by SBA, allows us to provide free SBIR and STTR support. So this is one example of the outreach and activities that we're able to do under that funding. Today I'll be moderating we're going to call this a kind of virtual fireside chat. I know everything's a little bit shaken up now with COVID, but this is going to be a great opportunity to talk to our two guests about SBIR and their experiences and things like that. And so before I introduce them, I just wanted to bring up a couple of housekeeping things for this meeting. The first is the first 20 people who registered will be receiving those Starbucks gift cards. And so we'll be sending those out either later this afternoon or tomorrow at the very latest. So please watch your emails for that if you're one of the first 20. The format for today is going to be very casual. We want this to be very conversational. And so we'll introduce our guest speakers and then have a really great conversation about SBIR. We took a bunch of the questions that came in from the registration. So we'll be covering some of those. But if you do have questions that come up, please do drop them in the chat. We'll be monitoring that. And then we will have about 20 minutes or so for Q&A at the end, at which time you can feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions then as well. Let's see. I think for the first one, we're also going to do some kind of fun polls and things throughout the event. And the first one, I believe Stephanie will be dropping in here pretty soon, is just if you could tell us where you're from, that would be really interesting to see where everybody is tuning in from today. And then another thing she'll also be dropping in the chat, or actually I see she already has, is a link to our NMFAST website. If you are interested in SBIR, maybe you're new to it or maybe you're really experienced, but you're looking for some resources, we have a pretty robust set of resources for all agencies available right on our website. And those include everything from proposal development documents to videos. We have a YouTube channel with videos, all of those kinds of things that relate to putting together a SBIR or STTR package. We have resources for both. And I think with that, I would like to introduce our guest speakers for today. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves, but our two guest speakers are Patricia Knighton and Anna Mattia. We're so thankful and happy you guys could join us today. And I guess for introductions, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, and then maybe what led you to pursue SBIR funding for the technology or innovation you were working on. So that could be what you're currently working on, or maybe if you want to go back to when you first learned about the programs and was thinking about going after that funding. What kind of made you consider SBIR and what did that look like? So I'm going to turn it over to, I don't know, maybe Anna, if you want to go first.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me, Dana. It's really great. And it's great to see all you wonderful people in New Mexico. I happen to not be in New Mexico right now. I'm in Portland, Oregon, although I divide my time between Portland and Santa Fe, but COVID kind of put a damper on that. So now I'm in Portland for a while. So yeah, let's see how I got started. Do you want us to just jump in, or were you going to do a round introductions, or?
Yeah, if you want to just jump in, tell us about yourself. Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, so so I'm Ana Consuelo Matilla, and I am a health communications specialist. I've been in health communications for most of my career, over 30 years. And I have always been very and well known for my innovative work in terms of how to educate people in an innovative way. For example, I'm one of the first people in the country to use fotonovelas as a health education tool. And a fotonovela, for those of you that don't know, is like a comic book, only instead of using illustrations to tell a story, you use photographs with dialogue bubbles to tell a story. And as you might know, health communications and health literacy is a big deal. It's a huge barrier for people of color, and there's huge disparities around health information. So what we've done is use this really entertaining medium to teach people about health. And so I was one of the first educators in the country to use fotonovelas to teach people about AIDS. So back in 1987, I produced my first fotonovela on AIDS. So I'm a storyteller, right? And so I use storytelling to educate people about all kinds of things. And I'm a health communications person as well. So anyway, so that I've always been very innovative in my work. And so that's just one example of an innovation that I've used. And I have received SBIR funds to research fotonovelas. And, I can tell you about that later, but just to give you an idea of, I've always been an innovative educator, right? And so then I met Pete Solis, who is a wonderful biomedical engineer in Albuquerque, told him what I did, and he said, you know what? Have you ever gotten SBIR funding? And I said, no, I didn't even know what SBIR was. That was, I don't know, maybe I want to say 15 years ago. And so he basically helped me do my first SBIR phase 1. And I got it, and I didn't realize how difficult it was to get an SBIR the first time you apply for it. And I did. I got it. It was just a phase 1. And we didn't go to phase 2 on that particular research. It just didn't merit phase 2, so I didn't go to phase 2, right? Because research is about finding out if you're onto something or not. And so anyway, so we didn't go to phase 2 on that. And then after that, I've gotten several phase 1s and then one fast track, which took 2 or 3 times for us to get funded on that. So that's how I got started, right? I'm an innovative educator, and then I got matched with SBIR resources, and that's what I got started. So overall, I've received 3 SBIRs phase 1 and 1 fast track. That's my history with funding with SBIR. What else did I miss anything, Dana?
Those are all NIH, correct?
Yes, and I've only gotten NIH. Because I'm a health communications specialist. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, and we'll get more in depth into the particulars here in a little bit. But maybe Patricia, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and talk a little bit about?
Sure. Hi, good morning, and thank you very much, Arrowhead, Dana, for the invitation, and Anna, very nice to see you again. We've been on SBIR panels together before, and to all of you, good morning, and it's a beautiful day in New Mexico. I have a brilliant sun combined with my coffee to get my brain activated, and we'll be outdoors a little later to enjoy some free vitamin D. So that's my pitch for New Mexico. Anyone who's not here, you should be jealous by now. Anyway, so my name's Patricia Knighton. I am currently an independent consultant, and good timing since we're all home officing these days. But most of my SBIR experience, which by the way goes very far back, I really think my first SBIR proposals on behalf of an employer were in the late 90s. So I have been doing this for various employers. I have a history of working with companies that are advanced technologies, very new technologies, usually coming out of federal laboratories. And we have several of those, as you know, in the state. And most of my work has been with the Department of Defense. I've done phase 1s successfully, that went to phase 2, and phase 2 is a much bigger deal. I've not been successful yet at a fast track, but I've had some other very interesting commercialization successes that we can talk about a little bit later. The agencies that I've worked with the most are the Department of Defense and the Department of Energy. So very often in the area of national security technology. So I'm always fascinated by the NIH world, and I understand that the Department of Education as well is a big SBIR area. But my work has been in the DoD, and I have done an awful lot of work towards commercialization and phase 3. So thank you. Oh, Dana, your sound is off.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Still getting used to the virtual meetings, right?
I know.
Okay, well, great. So as we kind of go through this, and again, if anybody has questions, please drop them in the chat. We want this to be, again, very conversational, but to kind of kick us off, this is labeled as a women's SBIR. So for both of you, have you seen, or what are the challenges do you think that women entrepreneurs in particular face when pursuing federal funding? And then how might you mitigate these challenges, or how did you mitigate these challenges as women, especially since you both have been in the programs for quite a few years, and the programs have changed pretty significantly, even in the last, I would say, 5 years. So maybe what have you kind of seen shift, and if you could speak to maybe some of those challenges, that would be great.
I guess I'll go first each time to.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
All right, so in terms of women, and also I might say that this applies to people of color as well, right? Because basically we're not invited to the party, right? We have to kind of crash the party. And so the way that mainstream folks get ahead is mentorship. You know, they go to good schools, they meet really important people, they do all this networking. And a lot of times people of color and women are not invited to that party. So one of the biggest challenges for, I think, women is finding the right mentor. Now, I was lucky and I found a mentor right away, but without Pete's help, I would not have been able to do what I've done with SBIR. It was just, he knows so much that I didn't know and that I still don't know. And so to me, the gateway to SBIR was having a mentor, and things have changed. You know, I'm older than most of you from the looks of you anyway, but Zoom does have a way of smoothing out the wrinkles. Anyway, but anyway, I am older than most of you, and maybe that's changed. I have a 37-year-old daughter that has been successful in getting mentors and much more successful than I was. So to me, mentorship, that's the key. And I think that's both the problem and the solution. You know, how the way you mitigate not, being able to get in there is, I think, the mentor. The other thing for me and our organization, right, we're a health communications organization. The other thing that is helpful, and it continues to be a barrier even now, is that I'm a qualitative researcher. I have a lot of qualitative research experience, but I'm not a statistician. I'm not a traditional researcher, right? And in order to have a solid SBIR proposal, you need a really good team, and a member of your team needs to be a statistician. And even today, that is my biggest barrier, because we had a wonderful statistician that was helping us, and he moved to Utah and whatever, out of sight, out of mind kind of. So we don't currently have one. And that's been our own biggest barrier, where I even have spent money on statisticians, right? Entered into an agreement with a statistician, paid the statistician to help me with research design, and the research design didn't pass muster. And so huge barrier for me in that area. I don't know if other people have experienced that, but that's another key person The other thing that I think is really important, and I know it's going to sound cynical to you guys, but I don't have a PhD. I only have a master's degree. And when you put your team together, find somebody with a PhD because these people, these evaluators, they're biased. And that is the honest truth. There's implicit bias there, and you need to know about it ahead of time. And I hate to be that blunt, but that's what I have found out. And you need a PhD on your team. I decided I was going to be totally frank during this because I wish somebody, and had said some of those things to me, but I wish somebody had been as frank as I am being to me when I started. So.
Right, and I think that's especially true for NIH, right? With the, they look very, very critically at the team and the qualifications of the team. Kind of as a follow-on question really quick before we go to you, Patricia, one of the questions that came in during the registration was, and it kind of meshes well with what you were talking about is, so you're new to the game, you're new to SBIR, you may even be new to the ecosystem, and you have no connections, you don't know who to look for a mentor. How do you even start that process? Who do you go to? I will put a plug in for NMFAS. If you're in New Mexico, you can come to us.
Yes.
But you know, if you're new and you don't know as a business, or how do you go about trying to find that, or what are your first steps to do that?
Well, we're super lucky. I was just going to say that, right? So you didn't even have to make your own plug, Dana. I was just going to say that. When I started, Arrowhead didn't exist. You guys didn't exist. So, and you've helped a lot. So I think that's a good start because then you can connect. There's so many resources that, I mean, I haven't even taken advantage of all those resources you have. And so I think that's a really, really good start and a really important role for people in New Mexico. So thank you very much. So I think you nailed it. That's the way, to get connected. I went through the health sprint, any opportunities like that, those incubator opportunities, all of those opportunities, take them up, you do it. It's worth the effort.
Oh, great. And I will say one more thing too, really quick. If any of you who are on this call right now are kind of in that boat where you don't know where to go and you're not in New Mexico, please still reach out to us because we will connect you. If there's a FAST awardee in your state, we'll connect you to them. We have a pretty good network nationally of who is offering SBIR assistance. And so we'll do our best to connect you to the appropriate person in your state. So there are resources available for that. All right, thank you, Anna. Maybe Patricia, would you like to talk a little bit about the challenges you've seen, and maybe I know you are the queen of making connections and partnerships and things like that. So maybe if you could speak to that a little bit.
Thank you. Sure. Great remarks, Anna. And I'm gonna jump onto a couple of those because they struck a key. First of all, I was sort of I developed, my early career was in the commercial aerospace and defense aerospace sector. So I had mentors, but they didn't know it. And it was all male, right? I mean, that was back in I'm old too. And things happened back then in a very different way than they did right now. And it was, literally coming out of conference rooms, I'm going to watch the shock on the faces of the young people. We had to dry clean our suits because we dressed for success every day because we were in conference rooms where everyone smoked cigars and cigarettes. Didn't everyone can you believe it? Right. And then we used, word processing pools to write big proposals. So that was the big aero world that I grew up in. So I had mentors and they were mentoring me all the time because I was eager to be mentored. And so there was not a formal mentoring relationship, which I truly do suggest early on. So I kind of knew how to, learn from people. I had to, that was the only real way to learn, right? Was to watch and observe. So I learned business development and making connections in the defense industry very early in my career. And the good fortune is that Back in those days, everyone believed that you had to look your customer in the eye. You had to look them in the eye. You had to be on the ground. You had to go face to face. And so I learned at an early age to make that happen. I think one of my very first assignments when I came to New Mexico, which was years later, was to contact every director in a large organization during a bid. And I was sort of on the phone doing secret directory assistance calls and trying to find out who that belly button, we called the belly button, was that was going to make a decision about an important area. So I sort of started learning that early on, and I do encourage find your way to meet people who've done this before. Things like this that Arrowhead hosts, even in the virtual environment, we still have to network and make friends with those people who don't know they're our friend yet, right? They're all just friends we haven't met yet. And so my early, in the early days of SBIR, it was kind of an interesting game. The Defense Department, right, because SBIRs are a percentage of the R&D budget, the DoD SBIR program is very, very large, and that's multiple agencies, right? Air Force, Army, Navy, Marine Corps, they all are I don't know if Marine Corps actually does their own SBIRs or if they work under the Navy, but it's a large organization and a lot of funding. So people got sophisticated in working the system very well. And then in the old days, the game was, don't even write a proposal if they haven't written the topic with you in mind. So we were actively marketing the people who were going to be, letting these SBIRs or our customers were, put in a topic. So it was a game of that for a very long time. Now, in later years, working as not doing that, right? Just kind of going with topic flows and such. It does become a networking game early on. I think that if we're watching topics and you have that open topic period, contact the people that are putting out that topic. And their names are available. You have to reach them. Some of them make it hard to reach them, but if there's a way to be persistent, my little slogan, call them till they call you back. Hi, it's me again. Hi, Patricia Knighton. I called you yesterday. Just thought I'd check in today and see if possibly you might have a minute to chat. Oh, hi again, it's Patricia Knighton. I called you a couple times and left voicemail messages. I thought I would try again. Never be shy to do that. They're your friends. You haven't met them yet, but they are your friends. Trust me. And so I learned that method. And I think that mentorship and making your network happen is excellent. Today's world is so great. New Mexico's ecosystem has developed so much from the standpoint, as Anna said, of resources, outreach programs, events, and it's a very good place to learn and grow with. Arrowhead, kudos to you for reaching outside of the state too, because we are in a regional world and getting connections with other potential partners out of state or people who may know the customer you're looking for. So I agree with that. But I also want to say, go for it. It's a proposal. They're not deadly. They are proposals. And if you're in business and you're not used to writing lots and lots of them, maybe you shouldn't be in business, I say. But my point there is really learn to write proposals, keep your material, get organized, develop your content, and always write the proposal. Once you write it and submit it, you can get a debrief, you can meet people, you can learn where you go, and it doesn't always get awarded on the first time. Most SBIR awardees know they may have to do this a few times before they're successful. So that would be my point on that. Dana, I think I forgot your question.
No, you answered it. And actually, I kind of have a follow-on question. So kind of looking at the other side of the coin, right? So we looked at mentors to the small business as you're kind of developing, and you kind of touched on this, Patricia, but another really important side of that is talking to the agency, right? And so as a first-timer, as a first-time applicant, do you guys have any tips on how do you make that first contact? What do you, because that can be really nerve-wracking, right? To contact NIH or to contact DoD. How do you figure out who you need to contact? Again, shameless plug, you can always ask us, but it is really kind of daunting to make that initial phone call. And so do you have any tips or tricks in terms of how you identify and then go about doing that?
So the internet is a great tool. After 9/11, you don't see organizational charts anymore, and that used to be an excellent resource. You could literally see an organization. I don't know about the other agencies, but the Defense Department will publish their names and POC. So you do have to get to conferences or look at conference attendee lists and presenter lists. It's another way to keep your money close, right? It's expensive to get out there and go to all those conferences. And I guess I'm speaking pre-COVID because now you can just log on, but most of the time it requires a lot of travel. I do find that there's more and more small business conferences, and certainly the technical areas. So there's speaker lists and presenter lists and agenda of panelists. Those people are part of the network you're going to need. If they're out there pitching for the agency, then they are a target, and that's important. So you find them on LinkedIn, use all the modern techniques. But if you can't get to those conferences or small business outreach events, which almost all the agencies are really working hard at now, and I've been very successful doing that. I'm curious what Anna would say about that.
Yeah, I agree. The chutzpah is a really important thing.
Yes.
You have to have Patricia's attitude about, hello, it's me again, super important. Cannot stress that enough. One of the things that I did is early on when they have these SBIR conferences, they're overwhelming. If you're new to SBIR, it's overwhelming. And if a lesson learned for me is that if I had just gone into the conference with the idea of, I want to accomplish 3 things, not like, because it is really drinking like from a fire hose, right? So they have these slots where you can actually meet with the program officers and ask them if the idea, look, I have this idea, and you tell them, you pitch your idea. Is that an appropriate SBIR, phase 1? And they go, yeah, well, no, because of this and that. And so those conversations are super vital. And I found that was the most useful at the beginning. The most useful use of my time is to make appointments with as many people, one-on-one appointments as possible, and then attend the sessions that are at the beginning of your quest, right? Like, don't attend the how to manage the account if you haven't gotten an SBIR yet. But because then it's like, oh my God, I don't think I can do this, right? Because you're so overwhelmed. So I think that was really a lesson learned for me, that I tried to take everything in, and then I got really frustrated and discouraged. But once you make that personal connection, then it's really great to develop those relationships with those people and follow up, hey, we talked, what about this? What about that? Now, what's really cool is you can send your abstract and your specific aims ahead of time, and they'll critique it. Like at NIH, they'll critique it. They'll go, yeah, this specific aims is kind of like too, not specific enough or whatever. They'll give you feedback. And that's a really good start for you when you start writing the proposals. And yeah, so those are the kinds of things that but it's relationship building. It's exactly what Patricia said. It's exactly that. I wish I had more of that, because I'm not that much of an extrovert. So for those of us that are more introverted, those kinds of things are more difficult, but you got to learn how to do it. So
there's tricks to that, and they can be fun. So if you have a list of questions, think of the things that you want to know and get them written down. So you almost have to practice. And I'm an extrovert, And I have a lot of practice at this, but I still practice those calls. And it sounds silly, but you wouldn't get on, you wouldn't go in person to meet someone and not have an idea of what you're going to talk about. So get it written down, because it's important to have a prompt, and then have a little line. Have your sort of slogan line or your favorite line. I mean, I'm pretty basic. Hi, my name's Patricia Knighton. That's pretty basic, but you wouldn't believe how practicing that starts to make it easier for you to just pick up that phone. Hi, I'm Patricia Knighton. My name's Patricia Knighton. I'm here calling you about this SBIR. Do you have a few minutes? Just simple things, but it's an important area. That's a whole different coffee session, Dana. We could talk about, right?
Yeah,
and that could be an idea for another coffee session.
That is super, super true. Absolutely.
And I would add too that the one maybe upside of COVID, not that this is an upside, but one of the big challenges to attending those conferences that Anna mentioned is the cost for small businesses. It can be expensive to travel to DC, things like that. A lot of the SBIR conferences that would have happened in person are now going online. And so that's a great way if you're looking into SBIR and you want to do those one-on-one sessions, they're all virtual right now. And so the cost has, significantly dropped. Most of them are actually free. We're actually doing our Innovation Summit in December, where we will be holding those one-on-one sessions with program managers. And so again, that's a great opportunity to get in front of the decision makers really, and get direct feedback on what you're working on. So I'm going to move us along a little bit since we're running low on time. It's going really quick. But one of the questions that came up a lot in the registration survey is, what is something you learned about the application process that can make or break a proposal? And Anna, I know you kind of touched on the statistician. So maybe if there are other areas we're kind of shifting to the actual proposal development, little things or big things that can really make a proposal very successful or completely tank it. If you guys could maybe touch on that.
Well, for me, the most useful part of the application process is being denied. Because when you're denied, they give you a summary statement and they tell you exactly what's wrong, right? And how you could have made it better. Yes, earlier I kind of misspoke. I didn't get funded the first application. I got funded for the first concept, right? For the first idea, I got funded, but that took 2 applications, right? I had to reapply, and almost everyone has to reapply. So that's an important thing to remember, not to be discouraged, because when you're denied, they're still going to give you a summary statement and you're still going to learn a lot. And now you have this opportunity to call the person and talk to them about it, right? And that's really useful. Unfortunately, it's not always, you don't always get the same review committee on your second time around. And that is like something that's really wrong with SBIR, in my opinion, is that you can address everything that the first round of reviewers pointed out, address everything, resubmit, and then you have another group of reviewers and they're going to find a whole other bunch of things wrong, quote unquote, right? And that is super frustrating. And that's awful. It's happened to me a couple of times and it's very traumatic. So I just want to tell you that that can happen. And so, but again, that's the most useful part to me of the application process. It opens the door. Then you can ask all kinds of questions.
It's almost like the old days would, it'd be like what was that word we used to use for your first application, your first one? It's not a throwaway. It's a marketing tool. Don't even plan to win it. Now, I'm not saying you won't, but you've got to do what Anna said. You must engage after the award results are given to you. And it's an opportunity. And that's in any federal contract that I've ever worked. If you don't get that portion, if you don't leverage that an award. I'm not going to call it a loss because it's just an award waiting to happen. But you must go back in and talk and engage and get all the feedback possible. So that's really important. To your question though, Dana, about things to make sure the application has, and I'm picking up on the PhD part that Anna was talking about a little earlier. So know that the agencies, most often the SBIRs are managed by the research arm of that agency. And also know that the research arm is not, probably NIH and NSF, they're different because they serve a science project, but or science mission. But the Department of Defense agencies and Department of Energy, they are serving their end users. They are a research arm. Other than, like AFRL, Air Force Research Labs, we have 2 directorates in New Mexico, and the other 7 are out most of them in Dayton, Ohio. But those researchers are serving the needs of the major commands and the users of the technology. So, but they're the research labs. They are full of PhDs. So the word R to most researchers does mean that there is a very qualified principal investigator. So when you put your team together, if you have to sub out to the right qualification, if it's not you or someone right in your company, find that person and get them engaged, because it does matter. They are research organizations and they look at the composition of the team leading this only because they want to get sure research results at the end of this. So I think that's also very, very important. The good point, Hannah.
Right. And one of the things to kind of consider too is we'll help you with that teaming, right? And there's a lot of nuances between, we talk about the SBIR and STTR programs like it's one program, but really it's like 12 plus different programs because there's 12 different agencies or departments. And then when you consider DoD, that's one agency, but really when you look at all the directorates under DoD, they all do things kind of differently too. And so, another shameless plug, I'm sorry, but having somebody, and maybe not us, but having somebody look really critically at who is your team, what agency are you applying for, does it make sense for what you're proposing, will this team be able to carry out the work, etc. That's a really, really important part. So kind of, you both kind of touched on it, the first proposal is a beast to put together. How long did it take you to put together that very first proposal you ever put together, if you could approximate the number of hours?
The first proposal I ever put together, or how much you think a phase 1 takes?
Or maybe either, yeah.
The first proposal took me like, 4 or 5 weeks because I was doing so many things wrong, right? But for me, the most difficult part is the research design. That's the most difficult part, but the most time-consuming part, because the research design, if you have a good team, if you have a good statistician, and you're, co-designing, it shouldn't take that long. But for me, the most time-consuming part is setting up the case, the significance section, right? That's, to me, the most important part, because that's where you have to justify what you're doing and why. And that takes research, right? You need to read the articles, you need to, and so that, to me, so I would say a phase 1 for me, is a phase 1 probably takes me about 60 hours. I don't know.
I've never reduced it to hours. That's great, Anna. Thank you. Because it's weeks. I think of it in weeks. I think of process like, yes, get your significance of the opportunity down. And then I back into, I got to take a break, get it, draft it, make it sound, and then go into your supporting documentation and just get it done. I kind of bounce back from supporting docs and think, oh, wow, that, your brain works a certain way. So it is research work, right? It's not a letter proposal. It's a proposal for a
It's an
research
actual proposal.
yeah. So it's technical, it's real. And so I find for my brain that moving back and forth from supporting docs and administrative stuff, because in the end, you're going to be like many proposals, right? You're going to be kind of, oh, this is so good. This is so good. And you want that time on your technical side. So it's nice to have the supporting stuff done, get the resumes out of the way, get get all that stuff done. Of course, your costing is based on your technical approach. So that's kind of different as well. But I think that plan for plenty of time. Get involved in the cycles of the SBIR, watch the announcements and the early release of topics if you're not already in the game. So I think if you're in the business to develop a technology or a concept, you should be watching, and you have an agency that is your target or more than one, you should be watching their SBIR cycles all year round. Watch what's coming up, watch it, their websites are great. It's publicly available information. There's a lot of resources on it. You can find out on the proposal that you weren't awarded, the 3 other companies that were, and you can start to get to their websites and look at what they're doing and how they positioned, and maybe they are more competitive and it's just not the right ball game for you with the concept you propose. So think it through. So I think there's a lot of information, and it's a continual sleuth activity, right? You're always researching, always be researching.
Yeah, I want to say a couple things. Is it okay, Dana, or are we out of time?
No, you please, and then we'll open it up to questions after. Yeah.
Okay, so all the upfront work, see, like, okay, so all of that, all those registrations, it tells you, like, if you look up one of the funding announcements, it tells you everything that you need to do. That's apart from the 60 hours. You need to, register for SAM and get yourself an ERA account and get yourself a, grants.gov account. I mean, all of those bureaucratic things have to be done ahead of time, because if you wait until the last minute, you're going to go crazy. So all of that, do that way ahead of time. Do yourself a favor, unless you're a really good bureaucrat, and I'm a terrible bureaucrat. That's why I chose to be a consultant all my, work life. All of that upfront stuff, do it now. Wait. Do not wait. And then the other thing is, you're going to need letters of support, right? So once you have your abstract, your specific aims, and you've done your significance section, which is going to take you a chunk of time, get those letters of support lined up ahead of time, because sometimes it takes 3 weeks to get a letter of support from somebody that you have to keep bugging, hello, I called, and it's hard to, I always feel like, oh my God, they're so busy. And, you need some of Patricia's chutzpah. Because with me, I'm like,
I write it for them.
I am bothering him. You got to just kind of put all of that aside, but get the letters of support lined up early.
Yeah. Write them. I write them. I draft them for them and give them something to change, because expecting someone to generate a letter of support is.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. You got to give them something to change. Yeah.
Okay, great advice from both of you. We've been working with clients now for we're in our 6th year. And what we've seen is it takes over 100 hours for a first-time applicant.
Makes sense.
Generally to budget at least that amount of time if you're going to go for an award, because all
that's for a first-time applicant. That's a first-time applicant.
First-time applicant. Yeah. Once you get one in, it gets quicker, right? Because you have all of that information already and you can tweak. But for that first initial application, usually at about 100 hours, which is a substantial amount of time. All right, so I'm going to open it up now for questions from the audience. If anyone has a question, feel free to unmute. If there's no questions, I've got a list, but I wanted to give people the opportunity to ask if they have anything. So again, if you want to just unmute yourself, we can open it up for some questions.
I'm looking at the attendees. So we've got folks from a lot of places. That's great.
Mhm. And well, okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and ask another question, and if somebody has a question, you can jump in right after. And these questions that I have were again from the registration survey that we had when people registered. So another one, and this may be a little more specific to you, Anna, but also you, Patricia, but what are some of the challenges with writing a commercialization plan for a phase 2 and/or fast track funding? So maybe, Patricia, I know you're very well versed in commercialization, and then Anna, I know you've done the fast track. So if one or both of you want to speak to that question.
Patricia, why don't you take this and then I'll add anything else.
Okay, sure. So the commercialization plan implies that you've contacted the end user and the customers that would be the beneficiaries of the work you're doing. And I say that because you've got to have some level of a vision, product vision of where this is going and who are the users. I mean, that's really important. In fact, some programs have evolved so much in the big shakeup with the Air Force and their move to AFWorks that you can't even get off the ground if you have not got a commercialization goal and plan around. So I think probably most people do it in their minds. They just don't write out the framework and the path to get there. They know they've got a great idea. I'm looking at this, all these names here, and I'm sure you guys are doing some great work. I know you're thinking of who's going to use that. You just got to break that down. And my general philosophy, I mean, I make charts and, gate systems, it's like, what's the end in mind and what's that really going to look like? You don't have to know all the specs and industrial requirements for a phase 3 implementation at the very get-go, but you do have to know that these people will be your customers or they're your targets. And whether they're in the agency or out of the agency, right, in the non-government side, you've got to spell that out, and the who's and the whys of that commercialization plan. So the market size and some of those real big numbers, they're pretty easy to get. It's the details of, how they would implement and who it would be that I think are of most interest to people. They're not investing like a VC is, right? They're a non-dilutive investor. So they're looking at their return and they want to see that these dollars are getting into the business sector or the agency in the way that you want. So they want you to know that's your end game. So
right, Patricia, maybe could you, especially for DoD in particular, because having an SBIR sets you up for sole sourcing with DoD, right? And so can you maybe talk about how, and you kind of did already, but the commercialization plan is so important because you are setting yourself up really for your end user, which would be ultimately DoD if that's the agency you're applying to, right?
Key points, right? So that this is so one of the big things when you're in defense, how am I going to get you? You got this great technology, how am I going to get you? And most companies struggle with that because they need a contract vehicle. They have to have a way to get to you, and legitimately. So sole source is, I say pre-competed because technically it's a competition, and so you don't have to have it. I see all these questions and they're blocking my view. Okay, hey everybody. So they're pre-competed, so they're a contract for 5 years after the last date of the POP, of the period of performance of the SBIR. That's huge. So you don't need to run out and get a GSA schedule. You don't have to go do any other stuff. You have a contract once you have that, and letting the agency know that. And they are pre-competed, so they don't have to re-compete this. So it's a lot like sole sourcing, frankly. Yeah, it's very important.
Great, thank you. Anna, did you want to add to that?
No, I think those are all excellent points, and Patricia, you obviously have a lot more expertise in this than I do. I mean, I've written maybe 2 commercialization plans, but I think our company already has developed business plans, right? So
Right.
if you have a good business plan developed for your company, which you should, then
Right.
a lot of those, you know, points, content points you already have, right? So that's a really good way to feed into the commercialization plan. But yeah, I think it's the commercialization plan for the NIH grants. They give you a format to follow, right?
Oh,
And they give you specific, they have questions that you need to answer, and then you just write it to those questions. And that's the way, I did it, is I just like went point by point on what they were. But I already had so much of it because we already had a business plan, right? And a marketing plan.
and that's a really helpful tool. So I didn't know they gave you a format in NIH, but someone should grab that and use it for
Yeah.
other agencies. It's a good guide. So sometimes
Yeah.
it's hard to write a commercialization plan and your business plan and specific agency questions and or look at material from prior bidders to that agency and what was successful.
Yeah, and in phase 1 for NIH, you don't attach a commercialization plan, but you have to have, like, you have 1 paragraph to tell them about what you think the commercialization potential is. But so you don't need to attach a business plan to phase 1, but it's really good, useful information to have a business plan.
Right.
Business plan, so.
That's a great point. Are there any audience questions?
I have one question.
Okay, sure.
What's your guys' experience with or knowledge about SBIR proposals, but for international collaboration? Like, is that something that is normally not funded, or how does that work?
So from a DoD perspective, the US citizen part of the PIs is usually a pretty important area. So international isn't an area I've done much work in. I mean, it is, you would not want a non-US company as a prime, right? This is US tax dollars and it's a US focused program. I don't know about other agencies and international partners, however, maybe Anna can answer that.
Yeah, I think NIH does have allowances for international collaborations for sure. But as Patricia said, the principal investigator has to be a US citizen. But I think there are opportunities for international collaboration. I've never done it before, but I've seen like part of the application that asks you questions about that. So I know other people do it, so you could probably call one of the agencies like AED or, AID or whatever it is that does international work. And I don't know if they have SBIR, they might. And so, so I've never had any experience with it, but I know that there are international collaborations possible.
Yeah, it gets into kind of gray area with international. If you want to, I'm gonna drop my email in the chat. If you want to, we can set up a time to talk after, and we can talk more about that because it's very specific. And with the agencies, it's kind of gray. So, but I'm happy to talk to you about it more after if you'd like.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions? Okay, so I guess one more question for Anna and Patricia before we sign off. And this is a kind of fun one, but if you had, or if you could give your former self, so think way back, first SBIR, if you could give your former self some advice, what would it be as you're looking at the SBIR programs?
I have a really obvious one. And again, I could just by talking to Patricia, I know she's really good at this, and that is get organized.
Oh,
Gosh, because if you have a good way of keeping track of your research and the literature that you cited and your everything, you got everything in the right pockets. When you start putting together a proposal, then you're just pulling stuff out. And so that is really a good advice that I would give my former and present self. So yeah.
Great, thank you.
That's a good one. I mean, you can never be too organized in
Yeah.
proposal writing, right? But I think it helps to have your sections at least, you know, framed out and stuff. I think my advice would be to stay optimistic. It can be very discouraging to not get an award. You work hard. I mean, if you submit a phase 1, it's work. 100 hours, that's probably right on, right? When you think about getting your SAM registration. So it can be a major letdown, and you really have to look at your submission as a success. You got the sucker in. I mean, that's huge. And so but it gets to be so, and you wait. And then you wait, and then you don't get an award. It can be a real letdown, and you may not want to try again. So, you know, it's a lot more fun to get an award than to get a notice that you didn't. But we are big girls here, and we're just going to press on and leverage all of that you learned, and all those contacts that you're going to make, and what you're going to learn, and go for it again. Plan on submitting multiple times. Plan on seeing multiple versions of your topic with multiple agencies, and that's a great reason to keep your repository of material, because you're going to do this again. So plan on it being, if SBIs are a good target for your company, just plan on it as part of your business strategy, and don't get discouraged. Stay optimistic.
That's an excellent point, as planning it as part of your business strategy, because it really is, right? We always say it's the best source of equity free funding for early stage technologies there is. No other program exists quite like it. So if you can take advantage of it, it's a great source to take advantage of. All right, so I'm gonna do closing remarks. The hour flew by. I think Stephanie did a poll to see if people would like to do this again. We're happy to facilitate this again. I know I had a lot of fun, but just to kind of reiterate, NMFAST we do serve New Mexico, but our resources are open to everybody. So if you go to our website, we've got all of our proposal development resources available. And then if you're interested in things like keeping up with agency updates and when solicitations are coming out, things like that, I encourage you to sign up for our newsletter. We do a monthly newsletter, and it just has pertinent information to SBIR. So any conferences, events, things like that, and then all of the agency information. And what's really great is we make it our priority to stay up to date on what all of the different agencies are doing, and especially now because they're changing so fast. They're changing, every single one I think has changed up how they're doing the proposal process and submission process. It's been crazy to keep track of, and so we make sure we have all of that information and collate it for you so you can have it in one easy to read newsletter every month. So again, my email is in the chat. If you'd like to reach out, contact me. I'm happy to talk. Again, happy to connect you to the person in your state who can provide that more hands-on assistance. I know I saw a comment from Texas. We can connect you there. Happy to do so. And again, thank you to everybody. Thank you, Patricia and Anna, for joining us today. We really appreciate your insights. And I want to say, have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Thanks a lot, you guys. Yeah,
Thank you
good
so
luck.
much. Have a great day.
Thank you.